The film starts with protests by locals who oppose the government's decision to erect a 40-foot wall around a part of dystopian Detroit. Because of this restriction, the enclosed zones became known as brick mansions. The government isolated the area, labeling it a no-go zone, in an effort to control the overwhelming crime rate that even law enforcement struggled to manage. Through the combined efforts of police and military, the state maintained strict surveillance, preventing residents from entering what has essentially become a deserted town. Schools and hospitals in this region were shut down following the government's decree. Meanwhile, the mayor holds a meeting with his business associates. He assures his partners that any redevelopment of the Brick Mansions area will require complete demolition, and he promises to handle everything, including relocating the people living there. In an apartment, a man named Lino is opening a suitcase filled with drugs that he stole from a dealer named K2. Lino attempts to dispose of the drugs by throwing all the packets into the bathtub. Meanwhile, outside the apartment, two of Lino's friends are trying to prevent K2 from entering. K2, looking for Lino, brings several men with him, who shoot Lino's friends. Fortunately, Lino manages to escape swiftly. He evades capture by using his agility and defense skills. In another apartment, a detective named Damian Collier is examining photos of criminals pinned to the walls of his home. These are the individuals he is determined to apprehend. One afternoon, Damian attends a dinner with a mobster named George. During the meal, George mentions that K2's drug package has been stolen and sees this as an opportunity to sell drugs to K2. George, however, is unsure who could infiltrate K2's place for him. Damian volunteers for the task, leveraging his experience with criminals. At K2's headquarters, he informs his boss, drug lord Tremaine Alexander, about the missing drug package. K2 admits that locating the stolen drugs has proven to be difficult. Frustrated by the news, Tremaine shoots one of his men to vent his anger and then threatens K2, insisting he must find the missing drugs and capture Lino. Fearful, K2 explains that he can easily lure Lino by kidnapping his girlfriend, thereby avoiding the need to search for him. Damian trailed George into his hideout with the police monitoring from a van across the street. Unbeknownst to George, Damian was actually working undercover to capture him. Once inside George's HQ, Damian activated a tracking device on his watch. One of George's guards noticed the suspicious van parked outside, and George quickly realized it was an undercover police vehicle. Furious that he was being followed, George shot one of his own men, suspecting betrayal. As George prepared to leave, Damian triggered the emergency alarm and took George hostage. However, George's men attacked Damian, resulting in a shootout. Damian, overwhelmed, was repeatedly shot but managed to follow George, who fled to a waiting car. Damian clung to the trunk as the car sped away in a zigzag pattern, with George shooting at him from inside. Damian managed to force the car to crash at a corner, ejecting George, who landed outside a police station. After George's capture, Damian went home, cleaned up, and identified his next target, Tremaine Alexander. Later, K2 drove with his partner, Reza, to the city center and arrived at a restaurant where Lola worked. Reza pulled a gun on Lola, who tried to defend herself by throwing her tray at Reza. She hurried to the kitchen, but K2 caught up with her and beat her until she lost consciousness. Lola was then taken and held captive at Tremaine's base in Brick Mansions. She appeared to regain consciousness and was immediately brought to Tremaine. Unexpectedly, Lino showed up by leaping from the roof and taking Tremaine hostage in front of his men. Lino then took Tremaine to a police station near the edge of Brick Mansions to have him arrested. Unfortunately, upon their arrival at the police station, the officers freed Tremaine and jailed Lino instead. It turned out that the police officer was corrupt and working with criminals. After Tremaine left the station, an enraged Lino managed to break the corrupt officer's neck. Meanwhile, at the mayor's office, Damian was introduced to Major Reno and Beringer. Damian had been called in for an urgent mission. Major Reno explained that the night before, a truck carrying nuclear bombs and missiles was hijacked by a gang in Brick Mansions. Worse still, the hijackers had activated the bomb's trigger, starting the countdown when they took it. The bomb could be deactivated if Damian entered a specific code. Thus, the mayor tasked Damian with locating the bomb to prevent a disaster. Damian was shown a picture of a man who happened to be Lino. Damian is tasked with partnering with Lino, who is very familiar with Brick Mansions. Meanwhile, Lino, in handcuffs, was escorted by prison guards to a car. Shortly after, Damian joined him in the prisoner car, disguised as an inmate to get close to Lino. During the ride, Damian attacked the guard and took control of the car. Beneath an overpass, Damian freed Lino from his handcuffs. However, Lino attacked Damian, wanting to take the car for himself. They fought but eventually decided to cooperate and travel together in the car. Along the way, Lino mentioned he had trouble with Tremaine. Unfortunately, his story was cut short as the police started chasing them. Damien opted to take an alternative route to Brick Mansions, bypassing the main entrance. They managed to get into the Brick Mansions area by crashing through a multi-story building. However, as they exited the building, the van's brakes failed, causing them to collide with a parked car. Once the car stopped, Lino quickly handcuffed Damien to the steering wheel, suspecting he was a police officer. Lino left Damien alone, who was soon attacked by a group armed with guns. Damien fought them off, managed to break free from his handcuffs, exited the car, and took down each attacker. Meanwhile, atop an empty building, Lino watched Tremaine through binoculars. Damien showed up shortly after and promptly restrained Lino with handcuffs. He suggested they join forces, as they had a common goal. Lino agreed, especially since he wanted to rescue Lola. Together, Lino and Damien confronted Tremaine in his office. Lino informed Tremaine that Damien, a police officer, wanted to recover the stolen bomb. Tremaine instructed Damien to look outside with binoculars, revealing a missile aimed at the city center. He threatened to launch it unless the authorities paid a $30 million ransom. Damien contacted Major Reno to relay Tremaine's demands. Despite the mayor's warning that the ransom would bankrupt the city, Damien pretended over the phone that they agreed to pay and requested Tremaine's bank account details. After the call, Damien asked Tremaine to disable the bomb. However, Tremaine refused, insisting that the money needed to be deposited in his account first. Tremaine's men then escorted Lino and Damien into a room. Tremaine called K2 to inquire about the bomb's origin and was shocked to learn the government was willing to pay a significant sum. K2 explained that he had seized the opportunity after getting information about a weapons shipment. Inside the room, Lino, who was held captive, pretended to be dying and caused a commotion. This led to them being taken out for medical attention. On their way out, they attacked Tremaine's men and escaped using Tremaine's car. K2 and his men immediately chased after them. Officers from Brick Mansions also fired at Damien and Lino from the top of the wall. Eventually, Damien and Lino crashed into a pile of old tires and had to abandon the car. They quickly boarded a nearby parked school bus. K2's men noticed and fired automatic rifles at the bus. K2 then sent 2 of his men to inspect the bus, but they found it empty. Meanwhile, in the mayor's office, Major Reno and Beringer argued about demolishing the Brick Mansions area. Major Reno pointed out that launching the rocket would destroy the entire city due to the missile's 5-kilometer blast radius. In Tremaine's office, some of his men overseeing his finances claimed they had been tricked. Several of Tremaine's bank account balances had dropped significantly. Frustrated, Tremaine tried to launch a missile using a remote. Fortunately, Damien shot the device on the missile, preventing it from activating when Tremaine pressed the button. Damien then shot at Reza to keep her away from Lola. Meanwhile, Tremaine sealed all exits of the Brick Mansions with his men, trapping Damien and Lino inside. Damien and Lino had to evade Tremaine's men, jumping across buildings. In a deserted building, one of Tremaine's men, Yeti, confronted them. A fight broke out, revealing Yeti's strength as he withstood numerous blows and got back up. Eventually, Damien and Lino managed to subdue Yeti by tying him up. Lino struck Yeti on the head with a large rock, causing him to collapse. As this happened, Tremaine was fixing his missile control device. Ready to press the button again, he hesitated and decided against it, reluctant to take innocent lives. Reza, angered by what she saw as Tremaine's weakness, shot him in the left arm. Lola, having witnessed their argument, attacked Reza and succeeded in knocking her off the building. Shortly after, Damien and Lino arrived. Damien aimed a gun at Tremaine, accusing him of killing his father. Tremaine insisted it wasn't murder but a setup. Damien, however, remained unconvinced. When Damien saw the code to disarm the missile, Lino explained it was actually the Brick Mansions area code, not the missile deactivation code. Still, Damien was skeptical. During their argument, Lino revealed that the supposed hijacking with nuclear bombs and missiles never occurred. It was just a scheme by the mayor to demolish Brick Mansions. The mayor and his associates planned to build a business empire on the land. Finally, Damien allowed the bomb's timer to run out, and the trigger stopped. Realizing the deception, Damien, Lino, Tremaine, and his men attacked the mayor's office, returning the bomb trigger. Confronting the mayor, Damien tried to enter the code, only to be stopped by the mayor, who accidentally revealed that the code would blow up Brick Mansions to make way for a new city. Damien then pointed to the window where Tremaine's men were recording everything. The footage was broadcast live on multiple TV channels. Soon after, The mayor was arrested for his criminal activities. By the end of the film, Brick Mansions was reopened to the public, resuming normal life. When Damien visited, he found the residents living peacefully without violence. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you want to watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching and see you again soon. Take care.